right, here we go. So here is one of the craziest decks that I have. Basically, it's Scareclaws, and I can tell you this: Scareclaws has been a go-to deck for me pretty much throughout all the meta decks since Scareclaws were released because of how powerful this deck is. And let me tell you, this deck can compete against any deck. For one, it's extremely strong against any deck that uses the extra deck because you can very easily scythe lock your opponents going first. It can break boards going second, has some crazy effects, and you can basically make this deck to break boards and it'll still be consistent and it'll still play extremely well going first. Or you can make this deck a setup monster that your opponents have to try to break through. And like, no matter what, no matter how you build this deck, you can pretty much be successful with it going first, going second. And if you want to make this deck an absolute board breaker, you can absolutely do that, and your opponent have a nightmare stopping you from breaking their board because this deck can be made in a very universal way. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with 4 Mud Skipper. This is why this is the best starter. I'm going to reveal Lightheart right here and then link this monster off into Scareclaw Lightheart. Scareclaw Lightheart is going to search for a Reichphobia, and then the 4 Mud Skipper is going to first search for Parallelic Seas. I already have Reichphobia, but I'm just showing you. So it's going to search for Parallelic Seas. There we go. And then I go ahead and search for the Starfrost. But if you don't have Starfrost, or not Starfrost, but if you don't have Reichart, search for Reichart instead. I just searched for Starfrost because Starfrost is going to give me some extra value. So I just go ahead and pop the Lightheart right here, which allow me to summon it back onto the field. And then I go into Baron de Fleur right here, right? Then I summon out another Scareclaw monster to go into Dagda right here, and then Dagda will trigger off the Parallelic Seas. Now at this particular point in the combo, instead of going into Dagda, if you wanted to make this deck even more broken, you could run the Codebreaker engine, and there's a monster named Donner, for hire Donner. You could actually go into Donner right here, and then that Parallelic Seas would summon underneath one of the zones, summon another one out, because Parallelic Seas summons out another monster, and it just so happened to trigger my Dagda right here, but right there it would summon out 2 monsters. You would then, if you had Donner on the field, link those 2 into one of the code breaker, the link 2, and then it would point to the zone right underneath Donner, and then it would be co-linked, summoning out another code breaker, which would be the other code breaker monster. Then you can link those, all 3 of those, or the 2 material plus that 1 link material into the link 3. That will revive back both of those 2 monsters. So now you would have basically 3 monsters sitting under Donner, so you could use all of that as link material. Basically, I'm telling you that to tell you that you could go so much more crazy than what I'm doing right now. You could then use Donner plus the other one to basically go into Dagda, and then use the other 2 to go into some more shit. You do pretty much whatever you want, but I'm not doing that, right? I'm just keeping it simple for right now. So I go into IP Masquerena, and then I'm going to revive back with Arrival to go into Predator Plant Verde Anaconda. And then I just go into DPE right here. And then, of course, Faithful Adventurer is going to search for Water Enchantress, sending Water Enchantress, then activate that to search for Rite of Ares Mirror, and then I'm just pretty much going to end my turn. I was only really searching for this, so then that way I have a follow-up for next turn. Now, here's the cool thing about this particular board, right? 3 monsters in defense means this card is live to start popping cards. So I can pop something if there's 3 monsters in defense. Well, there's nothing in defense on the field right now, right? We also have Baron de Fleur, which can pop something on my turn, just like how this card can pop something on my turn this one can pop something on my turn. There's no condition to pop it, it just has to be my turn and I can pop, right? Then it's an Omni Negate, and of course it can tag out to revive something. All three effects of this particular card are going to be live in this deck. All three are valuable in this deck, and I'll explain that once I get to this card. So then we got DP, quick effect pop, and then a self-reviving effect each turn that this card is popped, right? Then we got Predator Plant Verde Anaconda, which is going to act as link material. And then we got IP Masquerena, which can tag out and use itself for link material as well. And then we have the Artifact Scythe. Now, Artifact Scythe, I can use DP to pop the Scythe. The Scythe hits the graveyard, comes back to the field, revives itself back onto the field, activates my opponent, then cannot use the extra deck, right? Now, if I do that on my opponent's turn with DPE, Scythe comes back, I then use these three as link material, like what you're going to see right here. It's the first thing I do. Go ahead and pop it, it revives back. Boom. My opponent cannot now use the extra deck, and I'm going to explain something to you. Once this card hits the graveyard again, which is, watch how I'm going to get it into the graveyard. Right here. Boom. Link it off with IP Masquerena, it's back into the graveyard. This card was made with IP Masquerena, which means it cannot be destroyed by card effects now. So they're locked out of the extra deck. They can't even put any monsters into attack position. Everything has to hit defense, cannot be destroyed by card effects. How are they going to beat me now, right? This cannot be affected by monsters that are in defense, so any monsters that hit the field that are going to go into defense, which is pretty much all of them, are not going to have any ability to affect this monster, right? So boom. So remember what I said? This card will now be live if one more monster hits the field, meaning I will have a pop off of this card if he summons or if I summon. And don't forget, DPE is going to come back to the field, which will give me my monster, my DPE, and then his monster, which will be 3 monsters, which will make that pop effect live. Boom, he ends up summoning out another monster, and then my DPE is going to come back. Now, he did not destroy my Baron de Fleur, which means that during the standby phase, remember I said all 3 effects will be live. During the standby phase, I can tag this card out to revive a level 9 or lower monster from my graveyard back onto the field to send this back to the extra deck. What is the best candidate to do that on? And which monster would I do that on, right? Let me show you. So I go past my own standby phase. Of course, I'm not going to use it right here. But the best possible monster to use that on is this Artifact Scythe, because it says right here, if this card is special summoned during your opponent's turn, your opponent cannot special summon monsters for the extra deck for the rest of the turn. So this card does not actually have to be popped to get that effect. It literally just has to be revived during my opponent's turn. So all I have to do is just use Baron de Fleur during my opponent's turn to tag out for Artifact Scythe. And does it meet under level 9? Absolutely. So yeah, this is a very good target. So I could Scythe lock them twice during their turn. The first turn and their next turn, I could Scythe lock them. And they'll still be under tryhard, which means that I get 3 turns myself to try to beat them. The first turn, the third turn, and the 5th turn. Right? Now, I'll go ahead and activate Rite of Varus Mirror right here. And I did draw Wandering Griffin Rider from my normal draw. So I didn't use Faithful Adventure. So, what does that mean? That means that when I summon out Wandering Griffin Rider, I never search for it off of Faithful Adventure. So, The first Omni Negate, if he is to activate any of these, when this goes back to my deck, I then search for it with Faithful Adventure, discard the Draco back because I have to discard when I use this card's effect. Discard the Draco back, search for the Wandering Griffin Rider from my deck so I have it back in my hand again, and then this will discard, and then it will equip from the graveyard to the Faithful Adventure token, giving me a spin back. So this card can spin something back as long as it's equipped to this monster, right? So it can spin back any of these cards. Now, can I pop the other three? Let's see. There's more than 3 monsters in defense, so this card is live to destroy, which is the first pop effect right there, which is what I used. So this card just got its effect. Now, this card can now pop something. DPE can pop something. So I activate Baron de Fleur to pop. And of course my opponent wants no more trouble. You know, so he goes ahead, gets up out of there. Now, could my opponent have beat me with his deck? Absolutely not. The best he possibly could have done was Monster Reborn me. Probably when DP hit the grave, tried to Monster Reborn me. It was probably the best possible thing he could have done. Or maybe revive Scythe and hope that I couldn't Scythe lock him again on his next turn or whatever. I don't know. I don't know what his plays could have been, but he wasn't beating me with this deck because this is an extra deck reliant deck. And then let me go ahead and show you guys my deck. So this is the exact deck that I beat him with, and let me tell you, this deck can be so much crazier. If you wanted to play this deck and you wanted to go even crazier than what I did, you could take out one of the Scareclaw Lighthearts, you could take out one of the Tryhards, you could take out I would say, just for purposes of explaining the deck and making it like busted, I would leave Chaos Angel in, and I would say take out Chang Ying, even though Chang Ying is like super powerful. This card's effect right here, just making it super difficult to then destroy any monsters by battle, and then making all of them making all the synchros unaffected by monster effects, would make this deck even crazier. Just the cannot be destroyed by battle would make this deck so crazy when this card hits the field. Now, you could put in this card right here, Donner, and then you could put in this Codebreaker Swordsman. You could put in this Codebreaker Zero Day. And then there's one more code breaker, which will be this one, which will give you 15 cards in your extra deck right there. And then you could remove out a card like Nemesis Keystone. You could add in one Rescue Cat, and then take out one of the Fusion Destinies right here. You could also take out Imperial Iron Wall. Don't really need this card. You could also take out Kurakari is a good board breaker, but you could take this card out. And you could also take out one of the Reichphobias. You don't really need 3 Reichphobias because you're not going to need that many turns with this particular deck. And then you could add in this card right here at 3. So now you have 9 ways to get to 4 Mud Skipper. And once you start your combos off, you also get some crazily insane combo lines with the Codebreaker engine. Now, you're not going to actually like need this card in your hand. You're never really going to need it in your hand. It'll be summoned by linking into this Codebreaker link 2 right here. Now, at the point where I was telling you where I put Scythe onto the field, instead of going into Scythe not Scythe, the Dagda, instead of going into Dagda, instead you would go into the Donner Dagger for hire. Once you do that, you would then use the 2 pieces of Parallelic Seas to go into this monster. It would then be co-linked with this Donner right here, and once it's co-linked, then you could then summon Codebreaker Zero Day into that slot next to the Donner for hire, and then basically you can make code breaker plays. So that gives you so much more link material to go into an early try hard, and then also being able to go into Crusadia, Avermax. Basically, being able to put both of those out at the same time gives you material to do all of that. So you could do that if you wanted to. It's just me pointing out a way to kind of get to some really broken stuff kind of early on into the plays. Don't necessarily have to do that, but hey, that's an easy way to get an absolutely broken board. Hopefully y'all enjoyed this video. Hopefully me showing this deck and like how much better this deck can actually become. As you can see, I'm not even running this deck at its fullest potential, and there's more to this particular deck. Let me go back to the original deck to show you, and I don't want to run it like that, but I'm just showing you it can be better. Here's another thing you could do also that I didn't even point out. So Water Enchantress, there's combos to where if you have multiple Scareclaw level 3s, you could actually go into Cherubini and then use Cherubini to send Water Enchantress to the grave, activate Water Enchantress, and then basically you could put the Adventure engine out aside the Scareclaw engine. So basically you can get a Scythe Lock and a Water Enchantress, like DPE, like all kind of stuff on the field at the same time. Like one crazy board with an Omni Negate and a whole bunch of stuff, and it's very easy to actually set all that up because you have so many Scareclaw level 3 monsters that you can just basically set that board up with. So yeah, and if you get Rescue Cat pretty much will allow you to go into Cherubini. But if you use Rescue Cat, because this will be normal summoned and then you're using the effects, you won't actually be able to activate Rite of Mirror. So just keep that in mind. But this card on the next follow-up play can summon from the graveyard if you go into DPE. So if you just so happen to have a Balone Scareclaw monster, or any Scareclaw monster, it could be Balone, Astra, or Acro, you can also summon Denier out, use those two on a follow-up play to actually go into Cherubini and then set up your Adventure engine like that, if you wanted to do it on a follow-up play. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.